Poets and bards referred to Ireland quite often in their material as Innis Fail. Innis Fail means the island of stones or the island of warriors. Thomas Campbell wrote, "O once the strings of Innis Fail were strung full tight with strings of gladness, but yet it often told a tale of more prevailing sadness." And Ireland has had a lot of prevailing sadness over the years. One of the reasons why we've had a lot of prevailing sadness over the years is because everyone wanted to invade us. The first guys that wanted to invade us were actually the Vikings, who came from Scandinavia. They came from across the water. They were looking for our wealth, our sons, and our daughter. They were known as the Vikings. They fought with our high kings, and often there was a great slaughter. But the Vikings actually did come into Ireland in 700, 800, 900. They assimilated into Ireland, and actually they developed places like Dublin, Limerick, and Waterford. They were responsible for founding those various cities. But around 1100, we had our friends from across the water again, the English, who dropped in pretty consistently. Now, it should be said, in fairness, that many of the English invaders at that stage were actually invited by Irish warlords themselves who wanted to win their own little battles. But over a period of about 400 or 500 years, Ireland eventually succumbed to the English. And we were brought to book by a hated conqueror who at times penalised the Catholics, prevented them from going to Mass, prevented them from being educated. Catholics were not allowed to vote. They were not allowed to become government officials. And they basically, the English, tried to trample on the Irish rights. And of course, the Irish, being Irish, we had regular risings. 1641, we fought the English, we lost. 1798, we fought the English, we lost. 1803, the Robert Emmet Rebellion, we lost. 1848, we lost. 1867, the Fenian Rising, we lost. 1916 Rising, we lost. 1921 War of Independence, we won. But what happened in the War of Independence, though, Michael Collins was one of the people who fought in the War of Independence. He was one of the people who fought in the 1916 Rising, also the War of Independence, and was responsible for Ireland getting its freedom. But once again, though, the harp of Innis Fail told tales of prevailing sadness. Because as soon as we got our freedom, then we started fighting each other. And we had a vicious civil war for about 1 year, where Irishmen who had fought together in the 1916 Rising, who had fought together in the War of Independence from 1919 to 1921, and would have done anything to save each other, actually took up arms against each other. And we had a vicious civil war. And one of the casualties of the Civil War was Michael Collins, shot not by an English bullet, but by an Irish bullet. But the most prevailing sadness, though, that hit Ireland was the potato famine, which hit Ireland in the 1840s. Around that time, about 50% of the Irish population was living in abject poverty, barely eking out a living, trying to pay rent to absentee landlords for land that the Irish once owned. Their staple diet was the potato. In fact, their only diet was the potato. And Big Mike and Big Jack would come in from a day of picking potatoes, say, "What's for dinner, Mom?" "Potatoes, lads." And every day of the week it was potatoes, lads. And every month of the year it was potatoes, lads. Which is fine as long as you've got potatoes, lads. But in 1845, 1846, the potato crop failed. About 1/3 of the potato crop failed. And people soon were afraid of dying. 1847, almost all of the potato crop failed. And as you saw, your kids, your family, your neighbours dying of disease and starvation, now people were afraid of living. Nicholas Cummins, the magistrate of Cork, wrote to the London Times, published Christmas Eve, 1846, saying, "The sights which greeted me were such that no tongue or pen can convey the slightest description of. 6 starving and ghastly skeletons, to all appearances dead, were huddled in a corner on filthy straw, their only covering a ragged horsecloth. I approached with horror and found by a low moaning that they were alive. 4 children, a woman, and what had once been a man. Within a few minutes, I was surrounded by 200 such ghastly skeletons. Their demon-like yells are still ringing in my ear. Their images are burned in my brain." One of the reasons why the demon-like yells might have been so shrill in those days is that while Ireland and Irish people were dying of starvation, Irish corn and Irish wheat was being exported to England. The administrator of Ireland in those days, the person who was running Ireland, was Charles Trevelyan, who said that famine was a mechanism for reducing surplus population. The judgment of God has sent this calamity to the Irish people, a judgment that should not be much mitigated. And it wasn't much mitigated, although in fairness a number of charities did make valiant efforts. 1.5 million people died in the Irish famine. In 1848, Charles Trevelyan was knighted for his services to Ireland. Over a period, every day, the equivalent of one 9/11 happened. Every day in Ireland. But it wasn't just the people were dying, the country was dying as well. Because anyone who could leave Ireland did leave Ireland at that stage. 1847, 200,000 people left. 1848, 200,000 people left. 1849, 200,000. 1850, 200,000. And it never stopped. "Mama, it's only for a while," he said with a sad, sad smile. But her dear old heart was broken. Not another word was spoken. Another child and son were exiled.